Hey everyone, this is Joel from Reboot Studios, and today is the start of a beginners series for people who have just picked up the Unity software and want to learn how to make their first game. So this will be part one of this series. This series will require a very small amount of coding knowledge and really is only for beginners to the Unity software. So we'll be going over the interface. We'll be going over the asset store, standard assets, everything like that. So I'd like to get started by just showing you the interface. So I'm in dark mode right now, which is only available when you pay for for Unity Pro. But you'll most likely be starting with Unity Free, as I did. Here you have your hierarchy. Now this is where all of the objects are placed in your scene. So your scene is sort of like your level or your world. So you can have multiple scenes and you can switch between them, and it's sort of like switching your levels, and your hierarchy and all the objects in your scene will reset when you go into your new scene. So the way to look around your scene is this with this scene view here. So you can hold right click on your mouse and look around in 360 degrees by moving around your mouse. And you can also use your W, A, S, and D keys to move around your scene, so you can see all the objects that you have. And you can also click these buttons up here to move your view as well. And if you pay attention, with our main camera, the camera preview right here is the same as our game view. So everything that you can see in this camera is what comes up in the game view, and this is what the player will see when they're playing our game. So if I was to put something in front of this camera, you'd be able to see it right here in the game view, which I'll show you in a second. So here we have our assets folder. Now this will be empty for you, but I'm going to show you how we can add a couple things like I've done here. So your assets folder is sort of like your entire project's files. So it's sort of like your you keep your scenes in there, you keep your scripts, your textures, your models. So everything you need is in this assets folder, and you drag that into your project as you see fit. So this is sort of like a quick access folder, which would usually just be in your file explorer. So we also have our inspector right here. Now this is, say if I click this main camera in the hierarchy, we're now inspecting this main camera, so I can change its name, its tag, its transform, and its transform is sort of like where it is in the scene. So if I move these around, it sort of moves where it is on the X, Y, and Z axis, and it's also got rotation and scale. So we also have a camera component here. Now this is basically, you can change your field of view and stuff like that. That's what makes this object a camera. So I could add this camera component using add component down here. I could add this camera component to any object, and it would turn that object into a camera. And obviously you also need an audio listener on a camera, because that camera is listening for audio sources, which if I just create an empty object by going to game object and create empty, and I just added an audio source to it, if the camera was within its range, it would be able to hear this audio source simply because it has an audio listener. So if I just added an audio clip to it, it would play, and this camera would be able to detect it, and the player would hear it. So we also have the console right here. So if I go into this, it sort of has any errors, which there are a couple of errors because I'm using an old version of standard assets, which I'll show you soon. But there are a couple of errors, but this just logs all of the errors in your project, all the warnings, and also all of the logs that you set yourself in your code. So if you want to know when something's happening, you would use a debug.log statement in your code, and it would come through here. And you could just click on it, and it'll show you in your code where that thing is happening. Which, if you don't understand this right now, don't worry, because you'll understand soon. So now that I've taught you the interface, I'd like to teach you about the Unity Asset Store. So as I said before, I downloaded a standard assets. which is right here in my assets folder. Now I've downloaded characters and environment and effects. So the easy way to do this, even though it's not set up on my Unity, but it should be on yours if you have it brand new, is just go to assets and import package, and you should be able to see an environment and a characters and an effect. So just the effects doesn't matter as much, just download the environment and the characters from here. Now the other option is to search standard assets in the Unity Asset Store, and it's free, and you can just import it into your project and choose what you want out of it into your project. So there's also heaps of different assets on this store, and as I was talking about before, we don't really want to be using much code in this beginner tutorial, because as I said at the start, minimal coding knowledge minimal coding knowledge will need to be known in order to get through this tutorial. So we'll be using a lot of pre-coded assets instead of coding it ourselves. We will do a little bit of coding, but we'll try and shy away from it a little bit. So the reason why I've imported this environment folder in the standard assets, as you should too, is because it has a water and a terrain asset. So that means we can, when we create a terrain using this game object 3D object terrain, we're going to create that soon, and this will enable us to create land that our character can move across in our game. And because we're creating, we should be creating a sort of island, we're just going to make a big hill in that land, and we're just going to put water under it so it looks as though it's a nice island with ocean surrounding it. And then we're going to put some trees on the island, and we can learn a bit of the terrain effects and sort of stuff like that. So now that everything's imported and we're ready to go with creating our terrain, I'm going to put an end to the part 1 here, which is just simply the introduction part, getting you used to Unity and all sort of stuff like that. So I urge you to sort of play around with the Unity editor a little bit. Even if you're following along, just mess around a little bit, create some stuff, move it around, move your camera, maybe click the play button, which shows the actual game view. Now nothing much will be changing yet, but when you have scripts and stuff like that, it's when you click that play view, everything's going to change. So yeah, just play around, maybe add some assets and just see what you can do. The easiest way to learn is just to play around. So part 2 will be out very shortly. I'll be explaining how we make our terrain with our water in that one, and we might even add the character in that part, but we'll see how we go. So thank you guys very much for watching. Stay tuned for part 2. It's been Joel from Reboot Studios, and see you later.